All right, so we've looked at, in part one, we looked at the actual dollar numbers. In part two of the balance sheet comparison of Home Depot and Lowe's, what we're doing here is comparing the common size balance sheets. Common size balance sheet divides all the assets by total assets, all the liabilities and equity by total assets. So it turns the balance sheet into a percentage of assets, and it facilitates comparisons. So let's start looking at what we can see here. Notice that the current assets are roughly the same for both these companies, okay? As a percentage of assets, it's been about 42%, a little bit higher over here than, a little higher here than over at Lowe's. Generally speaking, because they're holding more cash, okay, that's about 2 points higher. And then the receivables. Remember, Lowe's doesn't have any receivables. They sell all their receivables to somebody else and turn them into cash immediately, okay? So the inventory is a little bit lower over at Home Depot, a little bit higher over at Lowe's. Home Depot carries a little bit more cash on their books, and they have some receivables. But bottom line, you're still looking at roughly 40% of the total assets are current assets. When we look at net fixed assets, it is fairly similar, around 50%, and non-current assets, and we'll talk a little bit more about those in a different video. Also notice that the operating leases, this is the first year they added the operating leases. They always did operating leases, they just did not report them on a balance sheet. So now they're reported both as assets and as liabilities. The asset is the right to use the leased equipment. You don't own let's say they're leasing delivery trucks. They don't own the delivery truck, so it's not their asset, but they have the right to use the delivery truck because they've leased it. So that creates a valuable asset, and it's a intangible asset because you can't really touch a right to something. If they own the truck, it'd be a tangible asset because it's something you can touch. All right, so notice that screws up their percentages since you added a bunch of stuff that you had never reported before. That's one of the reasons we see net fixed assets take a little nosedive and current assets take a little nosedive here. Was right around 42%, it went down a little. This was 50%, went down a little. That's because now you're dividing the pie among more categories. Okay, so there's not really a change in how they're doing business. It's just simply a change in reporting. So they started reporting operating leases this year, which they had never done before. You run into, they're always changing the accounting rules. So just be aware when a new category shows up, it could be because Lowe's or Home Depot decided to start reporting it. And it also could be that the accounting people passed a rule that everybody has to do it, which is what happened in this case. Okay, so we can see a little bit of differences if we're looking at the earlier years and just ignore the latest years, which has that glitch with the operating leases. But we can see that a little bit more over in Lowe's was held in long-term assets, depreciable assets, a little bit less in the other non-current assets, which are generally the intangibles. All right, and they were a little bit lower over here in the asset category for the current assets, and mostly attributable to they don't have any receivables, have slightly lower cash. They do have a little bit heavier load of inventory.